Good morning. Let us begin. We have a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Really fascinating daf. Begin by thanking this morning's sponsors, to thank our shir sponsors, our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Sivan, Baruch Meir and Rena Dubin. We're dedicating all the shir midrashos this month in the zechus of refuah shlema for their niece, Chava Tzipporah, Bas Chaya Malka. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, she together with Kol Cholei Yisroel have a complete and enduring refuah. And we thank our Daf Yomi sponsors today, Cesar Esther Mizrahi, for dedicating the shir, the Ilui nishmas, their father Shelomo Ben Miryam. Zichron Levrach, we hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, he, Shama Shtav and Aliyah, and the family Einachama. Well, with that, let us begin. Thank you to Rabbi Kalman Akiva for giving a wonderful shir yesterday. Today's daf is Tzadik Zayin 97, and we are picking up. Let's pick up on the bottom of Tzadik Vav Amud Beis. So we'll say let's pick up Rabbi Yochanan. 3 lines up from the bottom. Rabbi Yochanan, my taima kapit kulehai. So remember again, we saw the incredible exchange in yesterday's Gemara that Rabbi Eliezer went ahead and said over, Rabbi Eliezer, went over and said over a teaching in the Beis Medrash, and Lamaisa, he did not go ahead and mention it in the name of his Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan got very upset. So there was a whole effort to try to go ahead and placate Rabbi Yochanan. So says the Gemara, why did Rabbi Yochanan get so upset? In other words, I understand. At the end of the day, Rabbi Elazar relayed over a teaching, and he did not convey it over in the name of his Rebbe. He didn't convey it over in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say, but still at the end of the day, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi will say, well, you see this Gemara, and it almost seems a little what? Seems a little petty. It does. When you look at it, it seems a little petty that Rabbi Yochanan would get so upset over the fact that a teaching, that a ruling was not given over in his name. So what's the pshat? So we'll say 3 lines up from the bottom, 96b. But Rabbi Yochanan, my time kapet kulehai. Rabbi Yochanan, why are you getting all upset? Why are you getting all upset about the fact that the ruling was not given over in your name? I will say a profound Gemara. Then Rabbi Yehuda Marav, my dichsiv. What's the meaning when David HaMelech writes in Tehillim? What's the meaning of the pasuk where David HaMelech says, Agura ba'holcha olamim echaseh b'seiser knafecha sela. So we'll say, so literal translation is, I will dwell in your tents, plural, for eternity. I will find, literally, I'll hide myself or cover myself in your wings forever. So we'll say, so what's the pshat? Ask the Gemara. They will say, could a person live in 2 worlds? In other words, when David HaMelech says, Hashem, let me dwell in your tents. So the Gemara is already understanding that metaphorically, the tent is a reference to a domicile, to a world, to a level of existence. Could a person go ahead and simultaneously live in 2 worlds? Is that possible? And I will say, more colloquially, as we say, you can't dance at 2 chasanas, right? You can't be in 2 places at the same time. So what is David HaMelech asking from Hashem? And I will say, listen to how beautiful this is. Ela Amar David Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. David says, Ribono Shel Olam, here is my request. Yehi Ratzon, top of Tzadik Zayin, Sheyomru davar shmua mipi ba'olam hazeh. Hashem, my request is that please let when I die, let them say over Torah in my name. Say over Torah in my name. So we'll say, even when I'm not here in this world, when I'm living in the other ohel, I'm living in the tent of Olam Haba, let them say over my Torah in Olam Hazeh. Why, Rabbi? So listen to how beautiful and profoundly magnificent this is. Then Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rashbi, Kol Talmid Chacham she'omrim dvar shmua mipiv ba'olam hazeh. Anytime you say over the words of a Talmid Chacham in this world, sifsosav dovavos bekever. But listen to this: the lips of the Talmid Chacham move in the grave. So every single time you say over something in the name of a Talmid Chacham, his lips move in the grave. So Rabbi said, the idea, so look at Rashi, Sheyomru, top Rashi, Tzadik Zayin on the base, Sheyomru dvar shmua mipi ba'olam hazeh, shusif sefasai no'os bekever ki'ilu ani chai. So Rabbi said, so let's first say what David HaMelech is saying, and then let's try to analyze. So David HaMelech is saying, so remember, Gemara is asking Rabbi Yochanan, Why are you getting all upset that Rabbi Elazar did not say over a teaching in your name? Right? Rabbi said it almost seems like it's about kavod, like it's about ego. So Rabbi Yochanan, what are you getting all upset about? See, Rabbi said, here's what he's getting upset about. David HaMelech says, Hashem, I want to dwell in your tents, which means Hashem, the Gemara is understanding to mean, I want to dwell in Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba at the same time. But how could a person dwell in Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba at the same time? To which David HaMelech says that when I leave this world, I want them to say over Torah in my name. Why? Because Lamaisa, when you say over Torah in the name of a great person who is no longer in this world, their lips move in the grave. And in that moment when their lips move in the grave, it's as if they are simultaneously living on two levels. They exist in Olam Hazeh, in this world, the Torah that's being said, the lips moving in the grave, and the neshama existing in the Olam HaEmes. So Rabbi say that's what Rabbi Yochanan was so incredibly makbid about. He wanted eternality. He wanted life. So if his Torah was not being said over in his name in this world, although his neshama would be eternal, he loses out on the opportunity to continuously and perpetually exist in Olam Hazeh as well. I'll bring you back one moment. Take a look at Tzadik's Vav Amud Beis. There's a beautiful Tosas. Tosas writes over here, Agura ba'al ha'olamim. Hashem, I will dwell in your tents for eternity. Kishenishmaso b'yeshiva shalmaila. When a person's neshama is in the yeshiva shalmaila, the celestial yeshiva, sifsosav naos bekever. Lips move in the grave, kilu medabros, as if he is speaking. Nimtza shebisha achos dar bishnei olamim. And it turns out, Rabbi say, that in one moment, a person is simultaneously living in two worlds. And Rabbi say, you understand, of course, the Gemara is a metaphor within a metaphor. Why? Because think about this for just a moment. Lips moving in the grave works fine as long as what? Right, the body hasn't decomposed. But lamaisa, no matter, right? It's now okay. So you could taina. They say that the bodies of tzaddikim don't decompose. Okay, but I would say, but lamaisa again. It's a metaphor within the metaphor. Obviously, it doesn't literally mean the lips are moving in the grave. What it's talking about over here, I will say, is that when you say something over in the name of a Talmud Chacham, so ultimately what you're doing is you are creating for them a legacy in this world that transcends their lifetime. So Lemaisa, again, in that moment when you're saying something over the name of Talmud Chacham, they're living in two worlds. In that moment, they're living in two worlds. Their neshama is alive and well in Olam Haba, and their Torah is alive and well in this world. And that provides them with incredible eternality. So I will say that's what Rabbi Yochanan was fixated on. I want eternality in this world as well. And so he was makbid that if you're going to say, by the way, we have another Gemara, right? What's the other Gemara? Kala Omer Davar B'Shem Omro Mevi Geula Li'olam. When you say something over in the name of the person who said it, you bring Geula to the world. Now you can appreciate there's a little bit of a different take on that Gemara. When you say something over in the name of someone, you're bringing Geula. Geula for who? Geula for what? Geula for what? How else are you bringing Geula for that neshama? Because when you say something over in the name of a person who said it, you're redeeming them, you're bringing them a sense of Geula, because in that moment, they get the opportunity to exist in two worlds, in Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh, in the very same moment. Rabbi say, let's finish the Gemara and then I'll share with you another idea. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Zira, Veitem Shimon Nizira, Mikra. Rabbi say, what's the pasuk that highlights this dynamic? That when you say something over in the name of a tzaddik in this world, his lips move in the grave. So the Gemara over here quotes the pasuk from Shir Hashirim. V'chikech ki yain hatov, holich lidodi lemesharim dovev sifsei yeshenim. So Rabbi say, so literally means his palate is like good wine. Listen to this. So we'll say we compare the tzaddik to a cluster of grapes. So the Gemara says, "Ma komer shalanovim kevan shamaniach adam etzbo alav miyad dovev." We'll say when you take a ripened cluster of grapes, so what happens? The moment you press your finger to it, what occurs? The juice oozes out. Af tamidi chachamim Kevan she'omrim davar shmua mipiem ba'olam hazeh, sifsoseim dovavos bekever. So I will say, so ultimately, again, so too Talmidei Chachamim, when you say something over in their name in this world, their lips move in the grave. In other words, they're comparing the touching of the clusters to the saying over of the Torah. Just like when you touch the clusters, the juice oozes out. When you say over the Torah of a tzaddik, ultimately, again, their lips move in the kever. I will say, so there's so many incredible takeaways from this Gemara. Number one, I will say, the idea that a person has to leave a legacy. Person has to leave a legacy. You know what I'm saying? I will tell you, as someone who attends a lot of levayas, it's always, I know, not the life of the party, but it's interesting to see what the legacy that people leave over. It's interesting to see the legacy that people leave over. And sometimes, I'm being honest, you go to a levaya and you say to yourself, that's it? Like, that's what this person's family remembers about them? That's obviously, you can't sum up an entire life in one hesped. But Lemaisa, that's it. Out of a whole lifetime, this is what you remember about your parent? This is what you remember about your, like, that's the legacy? Say, depending on the legacy you leave for your children, you could live in two worlds. If you leave a legacy of Torah, if when your children think about you, they think about the real lessons you taught them, not the stuff you say, because the stuff you say, remember, we all say a lot of stuff, but the lessons you taught them, both through what you said, but how you lived. And if when you leave this world, your child could say, you know what? My parent stood for something. And here's the lesson they stood for. Here's the Torah they stood for. Here's the ideals they didn't just speak about, but they lived. And that inspires my children, my community, my family to follow in those ways. They will say that means every single time someone from your mishpacha lives based on your ideas and ideals, your lips move in the kever. You live in two worlds. I will say that is the power of leaving a legacy of ruchnius, of leaving a legacy of Torah. You have the opportunity to literally live in two worlds at the same time. Sifsosav dovavos bekever. And I will say, it's an overwhelming thing, because think about it for just a moment. And again, it's not a pleasant thought, but it's important to sometimes contemplate. If we were to leave the world today, what's the legacy I've left for my children? What have I left? Money's great. Financial security is fantastic. Always important. What's the legacy I have left? And I will say that is something we have to think about. Because Lemaisa, again, both for our families, but also for ourselves. Because who amongst us doesn't want to be able to live in two worlds at the same time? And when you leave behind Torah, that's what you get. A legacy in two sides, ability to live olam hazeh, olam haba at the same time. And I will say, just to correlate that, and then we're going to go on, is I will say, the real legacy you leave behind is your ruchnius. At the end of the day, anything material is great, but material things come and go. The real legacy a person leaves behind is the ruchnius that they have amassed in this world. That's the Yerusha you leave behind. And if your children appreciate that Yerusha, and they live that Yerusha, they give you eternality in two worlds. Such an incredible Gemara. So much more to say about it, but let's go weiter. Achad ben tes sharim. So let's remember again the Mishnah that went on, and the Mishnah said so interestingly that whether you have a boy who's 9 years old in one day, or for that matter again, halacha l'maaseh even older, if you don't have two saros, if you don't have two hairs, right, then a person is considered to be a katan. Then I will say, what the Mishnah sets up is the possibility that you could have someone who's 20 years old and still has the halachic designation of a katan. So says the Gemara, or minu, is that true? Ben esrim shana shalo hevi shtei saros. If you have a man who's 20 years old who didn't bring two hairs, yaviu raya shuben esrim v'hu asris. Shabbos say he brings a raya that he really is 20 years old, and ultimately we understand he's not a katan, but rather what? He's a sris. We spent a lot of time speaking about the sris. Therefore, again, lo cholitz v'lo miyabim, doesn't do yibum, doesn't do chalitza. Bas esrim shana shalo evia shtei saros. So we'll say similarly again, if you have a woman who's 20 years old and she has not produced signs of physical maturation, yaviu raya shibas esrim, bring a raya that she's 20, vihia islandess, and she's an islandess, lo choletzes v'lo misyavemes. So again, what do you see from here? You see from here that at the age of 20, we wouldn't look at this man or as this woman as a katan or a kitana. We would look at them as a sris. This contradicts the Mishnah, to which the Gemara says, no. Amarav Shmuel bar Yitzchak, Amarav, v'hu shanol du bo simani sris. Different case. They will say that's a situation where lemaisa, again, there are other signs that point to the fact that this person is a sris. So I will say there's two cases. There's one case where just the person exhibits no signs of physical maturation, and lemaisa, again, no simani sris. In that case, they could be considered a katan. But lemaisa, if a person goes ahead and has no signs of physical maturation and has simani sris, then what? At the age of 20, they'll be redesignated as a sris or as an islandess. And I both say, what's the ramification of being designated as a sris or an islandess? A sris or an islandess is what? Is a gadol, is an adult. A katan is a katan. To which the Gemara says, "V'chilo noldulo simani sris ad kama." The boss is very interesting. See, here's the question: what happens if you have a man who or a woman, for that matter, who just exhibits no signs of physical maturation, but also no simani sris? The boss, remember again the simani sris. We spoke of this in the Gemara. Simani sris, let's say for a man, could be a very high-pitched voice, or the Gemara says when he urinates, he doesn't urinate in an arc. There's no arc. So let's say again, he has no signs of physical maturation, but also no signs of sriskite. Right? So what's his status? So in other words, we'll say, up until what point in time, you can't be a katan forever. I will say, by the way, that is a very important lesson. You can't be a katan forever, right? At a certain point in time, you have to grow up and you have to be a gadol. So now I will say, now it's great. On a physical level, you have to show some signs of physical maturation. On an emotional level, you have to show some signs of emotional maturation. But Lamaisa, up until what age, could a person, there has to be a cutoff point where you say, okay, you're a gadol. So we'll say, how old? So Tani Beri Shchia ad rov shnosav. When you reach the majority of your years, then we'll say, what's the majority of your years? 36, right? We assume that the lifespan of a person, like David HaMelech says, is 70 years. So the majority of your years is 36. So interestingly enough, if a person reaches the age of 36, has not gone ahead and exhibited signs of physical maturation, but has also not exhibited signs of being a sris, at that point in time, we treat them like a gadol who has just failed to physically mature. To which the Gemara said, Kesel kamei de Rava, just very interesting, when somebody would come before Rava, right, and ultimately, again, they look at Rashi, Kesel kamei de Rava, ben chaf shelo hevi, lemivdak imishum kitanos imishum svisos. So we'll say sometimes Rava would have this shaila. Somebody would come to Rava, and they'd be 20 years old, and they would not have any signs of physical maturation. So how would Rava deal with the shaila? Rava said it's very interesting. Ikachish, amar lahu zilu abiriyua. So if a person was very thin, Rava would tell them, put on some weight. V'i bari, and if a person was overweight, amar lahu zilu achashu, lose some weight. Dahani simonin zimnin denasri machmas kechishusa, we'll say, interestingly enough, sometimes failure to produce signs of physical maturation could be a result of the fact that the body is not in equilibrium. Person's too thin, person's too obese. So therefore, again, Rava would tell them to kind of get their body in shape. And then, before we make any declarations, let's go ahead and make sure that your body is in the right state of being, which of us says is an interesting thing. That what Rava was saying is that sometimes when things are not going right in life, often the reflexive reaction is what? To kind of look externally, right? Who's at fault? What's misfiring? What's going on? And Rava is saying sometimes when things are not going right in life, the first order of business is introspect. Am I too thin? Am I too fat? Right? What's going? Some again, I will say such an incredible yisod when things are not going the way they should be. It's tempting to assign blame, but really the first step is to look inward, introspect, look at myself. What am I doing, and have I created or am I perpetuating this broken state of affairs? Incredible Musar. Hadrun Allah, Ha'isha Rabba. Good, Mazel Tov, I will say, Mazel Tov. No sin ala nusa v'ala mafuta. Right, so I will say, it's the next case. So I will say, so now we're going to talk about an interesting case. So no sin ala nusa v'ala mafuta. So what does this mean? Look at Rashi. No sin ala nusa v'ala mafuta. La'achar sha'anas upita es ha'isha. So we'll say, if a man goes ahead and violates or seduces a woman, mutar li sabita va'achosa v'ima. You're allowed to marry her daughter, her sister, or her mother. In other words, we'll say, remember again, normally you marry a woman, these women, mother, daughter, sister, are going to be arayas. This is talking about a case where you violated a woman or seduced a woman, not married her. Saloch alamaisa, these immediate relatives are not usher to you. You're permitted to marry them. So no sin ala nusa vala mafuta. Haones v'amefata al hanasua. Chayiv. But Abba say halach alamaisa, if a man is married to a woman and ultimately again would go ahead and seduce or violate either her mother, her daughter, or her sister, then there would be liability in those cases. No se adam, a person could marry anusas aviv umafutas aviv, a woman violated by his father or seduced by his father. We actually had this Gemara before. Right? Anusas b'no umafutas b'no. Somebody he's allowed to marry a woman who was seduced or violated by his son. Rabbi Yehuda says, ba'anusas aviv umafutas aviv. Rabbi Yehuda oser ba'anusas aviv umafutas. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you're not allowed to marry the woman violated or seduced by your father. Okay, so I will say, so that's the Mishnah. The Chiddush of the Mishnah being that Allah Chalamaisa, if you violate or seduce a woman, so her immediate relatives are not usher to you. The only time that those immediate relatives become usher is when? In a marital context. So I will say, by the way, I'll just mention, Menachem, we were talking yesterday after Rabbi Kovac's shir, and, you learn Yevamos, I will say, and the truth is, Menachem had a good point. Sometimes, you come home and your wife asks you, so what did you learn? So first of all, today is very good because you have a good piece of agarito, right? Good. So you're covered. You're covered for today. So it is interesting that and by the way, it's going to get pretty dicey today, right? So it is interesting how we're spending all of this time discussing who you could sleep with, who you can't sleep with. If you slept with that one, you slept with this one. It seems like lahavdil, whatever, certain whatever. And so l'maisa, what is this? What and really, is this happening? Is it? First of all, people are people, so stuff happens. All kinds of stuff happens, and we should never for a moment think that okay, some of these cases hopefully never happen, right? But Lamaisa, to think that Klal Yisrael doesn't struggle with matters of immorality, right, would be burying our head in the sand. That's absolutely not true. I will say, but understand, what these Gemaras are focused on are creating a moral construct for us. And understand, what makes Klal Yisrael is moral purity. See, Rabbi say, what distinguishes us from every other nation in the world, and Rabbi say, you see this happening now societally, is that we have a strict moral code, and a strict code regarding sexual morality. Because at the end of the day, without that code and without that system, that is how societies become debased and societies fundamentally unravel. I will say, don't we see this happening now in our greater society around us? The ground is always shifting. Right? What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? What's moral? What's immoral? And you look around and sometimes it seems like there's no more morality. It's whatever you want. It's whatever you choose. And no one has a right to go ahead and stand in judgment of anyone else's choices. You have to respect people for whatever the choices they make, but you don't have to accept those choices as correct, as right, or as moral. So we go through painstaking detail to highlight what's mutter, what's asr, what's moral, what's immoral. You see a Mishnah like this, really? We're talking about if you violate a woman, or you violate a woman, are you permitted to marry her sister, her mother, or her daughter? Well, chances are if you're violating a woman, you're probably not all that concerned with the other halachas as well. So first of all, it's not necessarily true, right? Everyone has their weaknesses, right? And in all seriousness, just because a person commits one aveira, otherwise we all commit averas, right? If it was an all or nothing approach, we'd all be in big trouble. But again, the takeaway is there's a system of morality. There's right and there's wrong. And without a system of morality, we disappear into the abyss of the immoral. That's the entire takeaway of Maseches Yevamos. There's a framework of what's right and what's wrong. And it's that framework of what's right, that's wrong, that has kept us throughout the ages. Because as every single other society moves the moral compass in whatever direction they want, we don't. And the fact that we don't is what has kept us throughout the ages and will keep us until the coming of Mashiach. Says the Gemara, Taninu lahad v'tana abanan. So we'll say, here we go. Anas isha mutar li sabita. So we'll say, now listen to this. If a man violated a woman, you're permitted to marry her daughter. Nasa isha asla li sabita. But obviously, once you marry a woman, her daughter is off limits to you. Now, we'll say, it's talking about obviously her daughter from a different marriage, not your biological daughter. Her daughter is asr to you. Or minore zekasha hanitan mina isha asr bi'imo bita ba'chosa. Now, we'll say, this is a very interesting halacha. If there are rumors that a particular man had a sexual relationship with a woman, it's a rumor. You're not allowed to marry her mother, her daughter, or her sister. What are we concerned about? We're concerned that because there may be a relationship between this man and this woman, if he marries her mother, daughter, or sister, he may still continue that relationship with her. So the Gemara says, so that's a case, ultimately, again, even a non-marriage case, just where there's a rumor that Reuven had a relationship with Rachel, and as a result, he's not allowed to marry Rachel's mother, sister, or daughter. Yet our Mishnah said that Allah Lamaisa what? Even if Reuven violated Rachel, he's permitted to go out and marry her mother, her sister, or her daughter. To which the Gemara says, you're right, midrabanan. That's like midrabanan. Okay, so I will say, so now what you're saying is, anytime a man had a sexual relationship with a woman, perhaps midrabanan, he's asr to her mother, her sister, or her daughter. But yet our Mishnah says no sin. No sin says even lechatchila. To which the Gemara says, kitnan masnisan la'achar misa. What is the Mishnah talking about? The Mishnah is talking about after the death of the woman. So the Mishnah's case is where a man violated a woman, right? So technically speaking, he is asr min derabanan to marry her sister, mother, or daughter. But once she dies, he is permitted to go out and marry these women. To which the Gemara says, so from where do we know this halacha? The Tan Rabbanon, Bekula ne'emar shchiva, Bekan ne'emar kicha. So we'll say very interesting halacha. In general, when it comes to arayos, the way arayos are phrased are shchiva, that you're not allowed to have relations with arayos. But interestingly enough, when it comes to the relatives of one's wife, so mother, sister, daughter, the Torah phrases it as kicha, teaching me that the only time that the mother, sister, or daughter of a particular woman are usher to me is when I'm married to that woman. But if I'm not married to her, even if I've had a sexual relationship with her, right, lemaisa again, her mother, sister, and daughter are not asura to me. The Torah, the Gemara says, to teach you that the only time that a mother, sister, daughter become asur is when you're married to that particular woman. But if there was any other kind of sexual relationship, ultimately there would not be an isser to these other women. To which the Gemara says, what about a sister? Where the pasuk says, Ish asher yikach es achoso bas aviv o bas imo. Both the Torah talks about a man, ki yikach, when he has relations with his sister. Could it mean, hachanami derech ki yechohuda asar derech shchiva shari? Are you telling me that Rabbi said that it's only asar to have relations with your sister if you married her, but not if you just stam had relations with her? Amrle likuchen ksivi b'Torah stam. Hare likicha kicha, hare lishchiva shchiva. Rabbi said the Torah uses lotion of yikach stam. Sometimes yikach means kiddushin, and sometimes yikach just means relations. Rava says, Anas isha mutar lisa bita mehacha. So Rabbi says the Mishnah is ruling. Rabbi say. So remember again. Understand what the Mishnah is saying. A man violates a woman. He is permitted to go ahead and marry her mother, sister, daughter. What's the novelty in that? The novelty in that is if you're married to a woman, you're not allowed to marry her mother, sister, daughter. You might have thought that violating a woman gives you the same status almost as marrying her. Kamash malon, it does not. So Rabbi says, I'll prove this halacha from another place. Mehacha, ksiv ervas bas bincho bas bitcha lo sigala. Pasuk says, literally again, the daughter of your son or the daughter of your daughter is an erva to you. So the Gemara says, ha bas bina dida ubas bita dida gali. But it sounds like again the daughter of her daughter or the daughter of her son, your wife's son, should be permitted. Uksiv ervas isho bita lo sigala as bas bina as bas bita lo sikach. The pasuk says you're not allowed to. Ha ketzad kan ba'onsin kan benisuin. One is talking about a case of violation, and one is talking about a case of marriage. They both say when you are married to a woman, all of these other relationships become usher to you. Right? So when you're married to a woman, her mother, sister, daughter, as well as what? Her daughter's daughter, her son's daughter, all become usher to you. But when it was a case of violation, there is no marital relationship, and therefore what? All of these other women remain permitted to the perpetrator. I can switch it around. The Gemara says, "Arayos she'er ksiv nisuin is." I'm sorry. Arayos she'er ksiv behu benisuin ika she'er ba'onsin leka she'er. Shabbos say ultimately again. Arayos use the word she'er. She'er means a relative. Ultimately, it's only in a case of marriage does someone become your relative. In a case of onsin, ultimately there is no relative. Seif Rabbosai, again, the first piece of halacha lamaisa that comes out over here is as follows: that halacha lamaisa, if you go ahead and you violate a man violates a woman, Reuven violates Rachel, he is permitted to marry her mother, her sister, and her daughter. What's the novelty in that? The novelty in that is that these are normally women who are prohibited when? In the context of a marriage. So in a marriage, Reuven marries Rachel, he's not allowed to marry her mother, her sister, her daughter. Not only that, he also can't marry who or can't have relations with who? Her daughter's daughter or her son's daughter. But if Reuven violates Rachel, he is permitted ultimately again to all of these women. All of these women. I will say, interestingly enough, another halacha that comes out is that if a man is rumored to have had a sexual relationship with a woman, he is not permitted to marry her relatives midrabanan, which is very interesting. So let's say there's not a case of violation, but there's rumors that Reuven is carrying on a sexual relationship with Rachel. Midrabanan, we say don't marry Rachel's mother, sister, or daughter, even though those are legal relationships. Why not? Because we're concerned that if he marries any of these women, he may continue his relationship with Rachel. Interesting halacha. Good. Weiter. Rabbi Yehuda oser ba'nusa savas. So Rabbi Yehuda says that halacha lamaisa, a woman violated by one's father or seduced by one's father is going to be asr. Says the Gemara, Amarav Gidal, Amarav, my time is Rabbi Yehuda. What's Rabbi Yehuda's logic? The pasuk says, Lo yikach ish es eshes aviv, v'lo yigale knaf aviv. A man should not take his father's wife, nor shall he uncover the corner of his father's garment. What does that mean? Knaf shera aviv lo yigale. Literally, again, the garment that saw his father. That's a reference to a woman with whom his father had relations with, the son should not have relations with. So therefore, a woman violated or seduced by one's father, the son should not marry such a woman. Umimai debanusad ksiv. How do you know the pasuk is talking about a woman violated by the father? Dichsiv me'eliyua, because we'll say the pasuk immediately preceding it says, "V'nasan ha'isha shochiv ima la'avia na'arach mishim kesef." The pasuk immediately before it is talking about a case of violation. The Rabbanon would say, if that pasuk was really immediately juxtaposed, I would agree with you. But Rabbi would say that pasuk of violation is actually not immediately juxtaposed, but it comes two psukim beforehand, and the pasuk for a different drasha. What's the drasha? The pasuk is actually talking about a woman who was waiting for yibum from one's father. And the pasuk comes to teach me that a shomeres yavam of my father is asura to me. To which the Gemara says, Umay knaf haroy la'aviv lo yigala. Torah is telling me that Allah Chalamaisa, a woman who is fit for my father, which means the Yevama. Right? So if a woman is waiting for Yibum from my father, I'm not allowed to have relations with that woman. To which the Gemara says, that's kind of obvious. Do you know why? V'seifukli mishum dodaso. The Gemara says, do you know why I can't have relations with a woman who is waiting for Yibum from my father? Because you know what we call her? My aunt. Right? So I will say, remember again, if a woman is waiting for Yibum from my father, that means it's what? It's my father's brother's wife. My father's brother is my uncle. His wife is my aunt. An aunt is an erva. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Lavar le b'shnei lavin. Comes to go ahead and make you chayiv shnei lavin. Once for aunt and once for shomeres yavam of the father. I v'seifok lei mishum rivav shuk. But there's another problem. When a woman is waiting for Yibum Rabbo, say, then what? Then what? She's asura to everyone. Everyone. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Lavar ale b'shlosha lavin. Mamish, not worth it. Right? So I'll say 3 lavin. Right? 3 lavin. Right? 1, the aunt. Number 2, the father's Yevama. Number 3, Yevama l'shuk. The other possibility is the achamisa. Ultimately, you're going to say, what's the case? The case could be after the death of the father. So now, after the death of the father, Rashi points out over here, there's no longer a din of Yevama l'shuk, because assuming the father was the only Yavam, this woman is not permitted to marry anyone else. La'achamisa. So the Gemara says, right, la'achamisa. Fine, let's stop there. La'achamisa. If you look at the last Rashi on the daf, la'achamisa. Shemes aviv deleka lav the Yevama l'shuk. So if the father dies, in halacha l'maisa, there's no longer an Isra b'Yevama l'shuk because she's no longer subject to Yibum, but she is still a woman who is fit for Yibum to my father, and what? She's still my aunt. Okay, now we'll say, now we're going to do a very, very interesting Gemara. Now we'll say, so first of all, take a look at Rashi, before we even look at Rashi. So here, we'll say, we're going to go through, watch this. Ach me'av velo me'em. So we'll say, these are a series of riddles, arayas riddles. Who doesn't love a good arayas riddle? So we'll say, right? So listen to this. This is actually pretty wild. So Rashi says over here, look at the first Rashi before we get into it. Mashalos hein. These are mashalos. These are riddles. Right? Mashal usually means like a parable. Here it means a riddle. Mashalos hein. Urigilin b'nei adam la'omra. People commonly said these. I have no idea which people commonly said this. I'll say, but look at Tosas. Tosas says, Achu barli, kol elu hamasim, lo mashmilucha midi, elo lechuvas hatzedukim. Oh, see, I will say, here's what's interesting. See, according to Rashi understands that these riddles, arayas riddles that we're about to get into now, people just sit over riddles. Some people like riddles. Tosas says, no. These riddles, they actually were set over by the tzedakah. The tzedakah, remember again, were people who did not believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh. And the tzedakah were always trying to undermine the legitimacy of Torah Sheba'al Peh. One of the ways they did that was to discredit the rabbis, to say that they didn't know what they were talking about. So the tzedakah often challenged the rabbanim with riddles. And when the rabbanim weren't able to answer the riddles, the tzedakah said, you see, so I will say, we're going to see now some of the arayas riddles that the tzedakah went ahead and challenged the rabbanim with. So here's the case. I will say, Ach me'av velo me'em. So I will say, I am a brother from a father, but not from the mother. V'hu ba'ala de'em, but I'm also the husband of the mother. V'ana barta da'anchasei, and I'm also ultimately again, I am the daughter of the wife. So I'm all of these people. So we'll say, what's going on over here? Look at Rashi. V'hu ba'ala de'em. Rashi explains the case over here. Achi me'avi, my paternal brother, noses imi, married my mother. So we'll say, so remember again, a paternal brother, so I don't share the same, right? So Reuven and Shimon are paternal brothers, they don't share the same mother. So right, so now Reuven says, my brother Shimon married my mother. Right, so Achi me'avi, noses imi, hainu diyakov anas es isha. Okay, v'holid bas, and then went ahead and had a daughter. V'nasa Ruven es anusas aviv, ubas Yaakov omeres came. So I will say, so here's the case, right? So my brother from my father married my mother. So Hainu, it gives the name Yaakov. Anas es isha. Yaakov violated a woman. Holid bas, went ahead and had a daughter. V'nasa Ruven, and then ultimately again Ruven, who's the son, married es anusas avid, married, right, the woman violated by his father. Ubas Yaakov omeres came, and the daughter of Yaakov is giving this mashal. Okay, so I'll say, so this is the case. All right, Bachama says, how could this happen? This is not in accordance with Rabbi Huda of our Mishnah, because remember again, Rabbi Huda of our Mishnah holds that it's mutter to go ahead and marry the woman violated by one's father. Fine. We'll say another riddle. Achu, he is my brother. Ubarihu, he's also my son. Ach se'ana, I am his sister. Dahaidarina akasvai, and the one who goes ahead, and the child who I'm holding on my shoulder. Mashkachas, I'm sorry. Let me read that again. Achu, he is my brother. Barihu, he's also my son. Ach se'ana, and I am the sister. Dahaidarina kasvai, the one I'm holding on my shoulder. How could this happen? So simple answer is West Virginia, right? But then I will say, right? So I'll say, so after that, right? So how else? Moshkachasla, ba'ovid kochavim haba'al bito, right? I will say, so the other possibility, ultimately, this could come about with an ovid kochavim who has relations with his daughter. Okay, now let's see, we're not going to go through all the mechanics of these cases, but these are the mashalim, right? Shalma lechabari, so we'll say, so literally again, peace unto you, my son. Bas ach sekana. So I'm sorry, right? So peace unto you, my son. Bas ach sekana. I am the daughter of your sister. So we'll say, how could that be? So right, mashkachasla ba'ovid kochavim ba'abito. This could come up with a case ultimately of an ovid kochavim. I'm sorry. Abbas Pito, thank you. Ovid Kochavim Abbas Pito. An Ovid Kochavim has relations ultimately again with his granddaughter. Because I will say ultimately again, in that case, then the offspring from that union could be the woman's son as well as her brother. Okay? So the Gemara says, Deloi dedalu davlo, lipo b'chu Cesar pasar. So again, I will say this is the opening of the riddle. To those of you who draw water from the well, let there be something, a riddle, that falls into your midst. If you look at Rashi says over here, Deloi dedalu davlo, libnei polin amashkines hasados anishalas chidazos. I'm asking this riddle, right, to those who go ahead and work in the fields. Lipo lechu Cesar pasar nafla lechem chidas tuma umustaris lipat. I'm going to give you a riddle that is impossible to decipher. What's the riddle? Here we go. Dahai didarina, this child that I am carrying, hu bar, he is my son, va'ana biras achua, but I am his brother's daughter. He is my son, but I am his brother's daughter. How could that happen? Mashkachasla ba'ovid kochavim haba abbas beno. The case would be an ovid kochavim who has relations and has a child with the daughter of his son. Okay? Bai me'ach v'hu'av. So literally again, bai is oivei, right? Oivei. Me'ach v'hu'av, from my brother who is my father, v'hu baal, and is my husband, v'hu bar baal, and is the son of my husband, v'hu baala de'im, and he is the husband of my mother, v'ana barta de'isesei, and I am the daughter of his wife. V'lo yoev pita la'achua yasmi b'nei barti. And yet, despite the fact that we're related on all of these different levels, right, he does not go ahead and give bread. Ultimately, again, la'achua yasmi b'nei barti, to his brothers, who are the orphans, the sons of his daughter. So, okay, what's the case? Mashkachasla ba'ovid kochavim abal imo. They both say the case over is an ovid kochavim who has relations with, right, who has relations with his mother, right, a son who has relations with his mother, v'holid mimena bas, and he has a daughter with her, v'chazar uba al osa bas, and then he has relations again with that daughter. Then what happened? The chazar zaken, then the grandfather comes along. Ubala has relations with this girl. V'holid mimenu banim. Ultimately, again, and then has children with her. Okay, so we'll say that's the case. That's the case. Ana ubas, we'll say the one thing you don't give for anniversary present in that family is a family tree. Right? So let's say, right? That's the one thing you don't give. It's actually a very short tree. It actually doesn't go up, it just goes sideways. So let's say, so the Gemara says, Ana that. So let's say the saving grace is that all of these cases are ovid kochavim. That's the saving grace. So let's say, Ana v'at achi. So we'll say, you and I are siblings. Ana v'avuch achi. And you and me and your father are siblings as well. Ana v'imeich achi, Me and your mother are siblings. So I will say, how could that happen? That a person could be siblings with the child and siblings with both of the parents. How could that happen? The case is as follows. Ovid Kochavim has relations with his mother. And he has two daughters with his mother. And then he has relations with one of his daughters, who, remember again, is also his what? Also his sister. V'holid mimenu bed, and has a son. V'kariyele ach sei di'imei, v'ka'amra lehachi, and ultimately, again, he calls, right, she will call herself the daughter of, the sister of his mother, and that's how they refer to them. So we'll say that's how the case comes up. Ana va'at bane b'nei achi, you and I are siblings, right? You and I are siblings. Ana va'avuch b'nei achi, me and your father are siblings, and ultimately ana v'imech b'nei achi, are also the son's siblings. So the Gemara says the truth is this you could find, it means b'nei achi, meaning the children of siblings. Ha be'aterinai mishkachosa, you can actually find this case in a heter case, in a mutter case. Kigon Ruven sheyesh lo shtei banos, like Ruven who has two daughters. But this is actually a mutter case. V'asa Shimon v'nosef chadam henayu. So Ruven has two daughters. Shimon comes and marries one of the daughters. V'asa bar Levi. And then the son of Levi comes and marries one of them. So the Kamar braid the Shimon, lebar braid the Levi. And ultimately, again, the son of Shimon is saying this ultimately to the son of Levi. Good. So I will say, so these are all these crazy cases. These are the mashal. So I will say, so again, according to Rashi, this was just good old Arayas trivia. Right? Good Arayas trivia, according to Tosis, much more important. These are the mashal, these are the cases that Tzdukim used to stump the Rabbanim, and therefore it was important that the Rabbanim become versed in them. Good. Fantastic. Says the Mishnah, Hagiores sheniskaru b'nei ima was an interesting case. So let's say you have a following situation, a Giores who converts together with her children. So it's a very important case. So now you have a woman. We'll just call her Rachel. Right? Rachel has two sons, Yosef and Binyamin. Right? Rachel converts, right, and her children convert with her, which means what? She has her children when she's not Jewish, right? So now the family converts together, right? And what's the halacha? Now, right, lo choltzin v'lo miyadmin. So we'll say, so now Yosef and Binyamin grow up, they get married. Yosef dies without children. So what's the halacha, Rabbi saying? There is no yibum. There is no yibam or chalitza, right? So Binyamin doesn't do yibam or chalitza. So the Gemara Mishnah says, lo choltza v'yom yadmin. So there's no chalitza, no yibam. Afilu harasa sharishon shelo b'kedusha, v'leidasa b'kedusha. We'll say, even in a case where what? We'll say, let's put a wrinkle in the case. Let's say even where Rachel converted, and let's say when Rachel converted, she was pregnant with Yosef. She gives birth to Yosef after she converts. And then what? And Binyamin was conceived and birthed once she was already Jewish. Nevertheless, ultimately, again, there's still no Yibam and Chalitza. And Rabbi saying, now why is there no Yibam and Chalitza in that case? Why is there no Yibam and Chalitza? Because the Meister, Rabbi say, remember again, since Binyamin, in case the one is obvious, because remember again, halacha l'maisa, yibum is established how? By paternal brothers, not by maternal brothers. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, in the first case, where Rachel had her children before she converted, right? So ultimately, again, so really Yosef and Binyamin are not paternal brothers. So therefore, again, even though they share the same mother, right, Lamaisa, again, they're not paternal brothers because they converted. The Mishnah's case is, even if Lamaisa, let's say again, Yosef was conceived when Rachel was not Jewish, but she birthed him when he was Jewish, which means he's a naturally born Jew. But Lamaisa's paternity is not intact, right? And therefore, again, Binyamin was conceived and was birthed with a Jewish mother and Jewish father. They're still not paternal brothers. Right? Why not? Because remember again, Yosef was conceived when his mother was not Jewish, which means that he does not have a halachic connection to a father. There's no Yibam and Chalitza in that case as well. And the same case would apply to a maidservant who was emancipated along with her servants. So let's analyze this case. So B'nei Yudan Amsa Ishtachar. So I will say Bnei Yudan. So right, Yudan was the name of the Shifcha. So this right, the sons of Yudan, the maidservant, were emancipated. Sharlu Rav Acha bar Yaakov leminsav nashi ahadadi, and ultimately Rav Acha bar Yaakov allowed the brothers to marry each other's wives. In other words, I will say, so there were two brothers. They're emancipated. So what happened? So the Maisa again, now let's say they both get married. And I both say, whatever the case is, look at Rashi. So I both say, the following case happened where halacha l'maisa, now the two sons grow up, they get married, they have kids. One of the brothers dies. The other brother decides he wants to marry the widow. It's not yibum, obviously, because there are kids. Ultimately, again, Rav Acha bar Yaakov said it's mutter. Why did Rav Acha bar Yaakov say it's mutter? I will say why? Because ger sheniskayer kekatan shenola dami. These brothers are not viewed as what? Brothers. They're not viewed as halachic brothers. And because they're not viewed as halachic brothers, therefore what? There's absolutely no restriction with them marrying each other's widows or divorcees or anything else like that. To which the Gemara says, Amar le Rava, v'ha Rav Sheshes aser. But Rav Sheshes said that it's aser. See, what we're going to see is as follows. Rav Sheshes is the stringent view who holds that even though when you convert, ultimately gershin iskar kekatan shenola dami. See, when a person converts, do they have a halachic connection to their father? The answer is no. But I will say, do they have a connection to their mother? So here's what's interesting. On one end, from a halachic perspective, the answer would seem to be no, right? Because lamaisa again, when you convert, you're like a child reborn. But I will say, here's the thing with a mother. That relationship is 1,000% ironclad. Why? Because we know who your mother is. See, I will say, we know the woman that birthed them. So the relationship to a mother in halacha is always intact. Rav Sheshes, we're going to see, felt that when you have two brothers who share the same mother, right? Halacha l'maisa, we treat them like brothers. In other words, let me say this differently. Rav Sheshes is going to hold that halacha l'maisa, even in a case, let's go with the Mishnah's case. Right? Rachel converts. Rachel is not Jewish. She's Rachel. Right? She's not Jewish. She has two sons. Right? We'll call them Joe and Ben. Right? And what happens? Rachel, Joe, and Ben convert. And now Baruch Hashem, who are they? Rachel, right? Yosef, and because that's a good conversion, right? And Binyamin, right? And Binyamin. So I both say, technically speaking, what's the relationship between Yosef and Binyamin to each other? None. What's the relationship to Rachel? None. Here's the problem. The problem is there is a relationship. Because we know that Rachel is their biological mother. So therefore, I will say there's going to be a school of thought that says we're going to treat them like brothers. We're going to treat them like brothers, l'chumra. And therefore, again, Rav Sheshes would say that if you have two brothers who we know share the same biological mother, they cannot marry each other's wives. They can't. There's no yibum and chalitza, right? Because lamaisa, again, there's no yibum and chalitza, but we're going to treat them like they were paternal brothers and prohibit them from marrying each other's wives. Interesting chumrah. So the Gemara says, let's go back there. So the Gemara says, so they said, so both say, Rav Acha bar Yaakov allowed them to marry each other's wives. So they said to Rav Acha bar Yaakov, but Rav Sheshes said it's aser. He said, fine. Amrulay, who aser? V'ana sharina. That's fine. He's machmir. I'm mekel. So Rabbi say, here we go. Mina avalo, mina ev, kule amalo pligi deshari. So Rabbi say, if you have two brothers who converted, and they're only paternal brothers, but not maternal brothers, everyone agrees that what? They are mutter to marry each other's wives. Everyone agrees. Right? Rabbi say, why? Because Lamaisa, again, everyone agrees that upon conversion, that relationship with the father, that right, is really severed. Because Rabbi say, there's another principle I play over here, which is that we assume Ovdei Kochavim are immoral. So therefore, again, in general, paternity by Ovdei Kochavim is always shrouded in some level of ambiguity. So when they convert, if they're only paternal brothers, halachically, that relationship does not carry over in any way. We don't look at them as brothers, right? So the Gemara says, Mina ein velo mina av, but if you have two brothers who are maternal brothers, Kule ama lo pligi da'aser. Everyone agrees that what? Everyone agrees that they're aser. Rabbi say aser. Now look at Rashi. Mina ein velo mina av, Kule ama lo pligi da'aser. Dasi lachlufe be Yisroel. Rabbi say aser means they can't marry each other's wives. I don't mean when they're married to each other, upon death or divorce. They can't marry each other's wives because they're both saying, we're concerned that people are going to confuse that case, ultimately again with cases of Jewish parents. Ki pligi, where's the machlokes? Mina'av u'mina'im. The both say, this is fascinating. Where's the machlokes? The machlokes is when you have brothers who are related both maternally and paternally. Man dishari, the one who says that it's mutar. And both say the case is where they're converting. Shabbos say, what's that play over here is they're converting. Shabbos say, so now we have in general, we say, Gershin is kair kekatan shenoladami. So in reality, that relationship is really no longer in existence. But the shayla is we have to be concerned about confusion. Shabbos say, so if they're just related paternally, everyone agrees there's no relation. If they're related maternally, everyone agrees that there's an isser. So where's the machlokes? So fascinating. Where's the machlokes? When they are both maternal and paternal brothers. So watch this. So the Gemara says, so pliki pligi mina'av u'mina'im. Man deshar, the one who says it's mutar, basar abba shadin alei. We look at them as paternally related, and therefore again, everything is mutar. So the Gemara says, man deshar basar abba shadin al dahabene planyo karina lahu. Because I will say people are normally known by the name of their father, but Rav Sheshes kari lahu nami b'nei plonis. And Rav Sheshes says no, they're also known as a son of the mother, and therefore Allah lamaisa they can't marry each other's wives. V'ika da'amri, others say. Someone says that's the machlokes. V'ika da'amri, others say. Polig Rav Achar bar Yaakov afilu ba'achin mina'im. Others say Rav Achar bar Yaakov Rabbo say argues even by maternal brothers. Umay taima. What's the reason why he would permit? My taima gershin iskayer kekatan shenola dami. Ultimately, again, because a ger who converts is like a katan, ultimately, again, who is reborn. So Rabbo say, I just want to point out something really fascinating that's unfolding over here. Salocha lamaisa. Rabbi say, up until I learned this sugya, we would have always assumed that everyone agrees that what? When a person converts, what's their familial status? What's their familial status? What do we call it? Unaffiliated. Familial status? None. So Rabbi say, we're being introduced to something fascinating over here. That when you have an intact family unit that converts, meaning a mother and two sons or more sons, that in halakha, we look at that as an intact family unit. And we are concerned, and therefore what our Mishnah is saying is that halakha lamaisa, those brothers can't marry each other's wives. So the Mishnah is saying, there's no din of yibum, no din of chalitza. That's obvious, there's no din of yibum and chalitza. Why is that obvious? Because it only applies to paternal brothers. What it's saying is no yibum and chalitza, but they're not permitted to marry each other's wives, which is really fascinating. Why are we concerned? Because I will say we're concerned that if there's a familial unit of brotherhood that exists, and brothers are permitted to marry each other's wives, then what? People would confuse that with other what we'll call natural-born Jewish families. See, because at the end of the day, people don't always know details. All they see is what? What do they know? Brothers. And if they see brothers marrying each other's widows or divorcees, they're going to draw erroneous conclusions. So Rabbi say, let's analyze. So let's go back to a little bit. So the Gemara says, good. Oh, I lost the place. Good. Tanan. Hagiora shinis gairu banei ima. So once we learn in the Mishnah. Let's at least read this line. We'll probably start from tomorrow. Tanan hagiora shinis gairu banei ima. Woman converts together with her children. Lo cholzin v'lo miyabmin. There's no chalitza, no yibam. So say, so again, just to play this out. Rachel converts with her sons Yosef and Binyamin. Yosef dies without children, right? Binyamin does not do yibam or chalitza. So my time, what's the reason? Lav mishum da asiri. It's because ultimately, so we'll say, why is there no yibam, no lo chalitza? Because ultimately, again, Binyamin is not permitted to marry Yosef's widow. To which the Gemara says, no. You know why there's no yibam and chalitza? De'ena b'torah's chalitza v'yibum v'sharya la'alma. Now both say the reason there's no yibum and chalitza is because there's no yibum and chalitza because it's not paternal brothers. And what it means is when we say there's no yibum and chalitza, what it means is that when Yosef dies and he leaves behind a childless widow, or Yosef dies childless and leaves behind the widow, who is she permitted to marry? Who is she permitted to marry? Anyone she wants. And not only that, v'inhu nami sharu. They both say included in marrying anyone she wants. Who else could she marry? Binyamin as well. Right, Binyamin as well. I v'hakatani afilu. But it says afilu. What do you do with afilu? Harasa sharishon. Right. The second case says afilu. Iyarmit b'shlama asiri hayru diktani afilu. Rabbi say, if you say that the first case in the Mishnah, see, Rabbi say, I just want to show you what's happened over here. Seismic shift. You felt it, right? Seismic shift. Rabbi say, what happened? Let's just say this outside for just a moment. We spoke about the first case. What was the first case in the Mishnah? It was very exciting. What's the first case in the Mishnah? First case in the Mishnah, Rachel converts, right? Rachel converts with her two sons, Joe and Ben. She becomes Rachel, Yosef, Binyamin. Beautiful, Mazel Tov. What happens? Yosef and Binyamin grow up, Baruch Hashem, they become doctors. This is a good Jewish story, right? They become doctors, right? They go out and they get married. Then what happens? Yosef dies without children. What does the Mishnah say? What's the halakha of the Mishnah? Right? No yibum, no chalitza. Okay? So I will say, the way we understood that up until now was, what does that mean? That Yosef and Binyamin, as much as are they real brothers? No. Halachically, they're not real brothers. Do they share the same mother halachically? Biologically, yes. Halachically, no. Right? Halachically, no. But the Mishnah is coming to teach is because there is an intact brother kite, right? We have to be careful about allowing them to marry each other's wives and creating a situation of confusion in other situations of brothers. I will say now, seismic shift. The Gemara says, no, that's not what it means. Right? That's not what it means. Rather, I will say, what does it mean? Perhaps what it means is like this. Halacha l'maisa, the Mishnah says, there's no yibum and chalitza. Why is there no yibum and chalitza? I will say, why is there yibum and chalitza? Why? Because they're not paternal brothers. And in fact, they're not really even what? They're not really even halachically brothers. So the Mishnah says there's no yibum and chalitza. And who is Yosef's widow permitted to marry? Anyone she wants, including Binyamin. So we'll have to stop over for today, but we'll pick up again. So now Abba said we are left with two ways to read the Mishnah. Is the Mishnah telling me that Yosef's widow, there's no yibum and chalitza, but she can't marry Binyamin? Or are we saying there's no yibum and chalitza, therefore she can marry anyone she wants, even Binyamin? And Mir Hashem, to be continued, and halacha l'maisa tomorrow. Shkoyach.